Sports. Undoubtedly one of the most common genres in manga and anime. From soccer and baseball to cycle and swimming, sports have always played an important part in the media. I think what makes sports such an interesting genre is that it transcends demographics. There are all sorts of series based around sports that are characterized as shonen, shoujo, seinen, and josei. And I think that's part of the appeal of the genre. Today, the manga dude here, I'm going to go over what makes sports, manga, and anime so entertaining to me and why it is one of my favorite genres to read and watch. I will also be going over my top 5 sports manga to give you an idea of my preferences with the genre. So before we actually begin, I think it's important to note that sports have played a huge role in my life. I've had the opportunity to play a variety of amazing sports, but I mostly stuck with soccer, football, and lacrosse. I'm a hugely competitive person, so I thoroughly enjoy any kind of competition, whether it is team-oriented or not. I loved feeling the energy of the crowds that watched my teams as we played. I loved the highs of winning games, of tough opponents, and the lows of losing a super close game. I loved cultivating friendships through the sport. Some of my longest standing friendships are because of sports and extracurriculars. I'm still really into sports, watching baseball almost every day and consuming hockey and American football when the seasons are underway. I still like to talk about the memories I've made from playing sports, and even to this day, I'm still trying out new sports. The culmination of my sports history is directly correlated to my love of sports manga and anime. Many of the series that I have had the chance to read and watch are usually really good at showing the various and different emotions that go into playing sports. It's even more fun when I find series of sports that I have already played, because I'm able to empathize with the players more. I also find sports series to be intriguing because they can somehow make you care about the antagonist, aka the teams that play against the main team. Some of my favorite characters from my favorite sports series aren't even on the main team or are opponents of the main character. For me, it's very rare for me to root for villains or antagonists in series, but more often than not, I'm rooting for a good game between the two players or the two teams. I get blown away whenever sports series subvert my expectations and completely surprise me with the outcomes of the games. I find myself gasping and cheering for these teams regardless if I'm watching or reading it. I think when it comes down to it, sports series are just so enjoyable in my opinion because of the good character writing. If a mangaka can make us, the reader, love a sport through their writing, they have most definitely done their job right. Now, onwards to the list. I love these series so much, and I hope you can gain some recommendations or see a series you enjoy. And I'd love to hear what your top 5 sports manga are, so leave that in the comments below. So, my number 5 sports manga series goes to iShield 21. This series, football manga by Riichiro Inagaki and Yusuke Murata of One Punch Man fame, features a character named Seneka Boyakawa, who is a really fast, really cool guy. Well, I think he's cool, but in the beginning, he's not like he's a very scrawny kid, very picked on for his size, but he's so fast that no one can catch him. So he ends up being recruited by the football team to play running back. However, he thinks he's too scared or too small to play it, but once he gets his first taste of game action, he can't stop. I think it's a really great series. It's a good time. The main cast is wonderful. Like, honestly, out of most of the sports manga that I've read recently, this is probably one of my favorite in terms of the team dynamic. You'll see later that there are a couple more, but I think the overall cast is great. I feel emotionally attached to basically everyone on the Damon Devilbats team. I root for them. I kind of like, I yell at my book. I'm like, yes, let's go, yeah, kind of stuff. I don't know. It's funny. I love it. It's definitely aged poorly in some parts. I won't say exactly what, but if you know, you know. But yeah, just keep that in mind, that like there are definitely things that have not aged the best in the series. But it's still my number 5 sports manga series because just of how like well drawn it is. I mean, Yusuke Murata is a master in terms of like dynamic posing and shading and just overall like a good balance of excitement and comedy in terms of the drawing. And Riichiro Inagaki is a fantastic writer, only gets better every day. So yeah, take a look at it. My number 4 sports manga series of all time will probably come to a shocker to some people who really enjoy sports manga, but my number 4 pick goes to Slam Dunk. Now, before you chew me out and being like, Slam Dunk is the best manga series of all time. And honestly, I could totally see that. Like, it's an amazing sports manga series by Takehiko Inoue of Vagabond and Real Frame as well. Definitely, I would say it's probably his most famous series, and it's phenomenal. I think it's a perfect up and coming story of a complete loser, sorta, Sakuragi Hanamichi, who is this red haired punk who really doesn't have a lot going for himself, but he's been trying really hard to get a girl to like him or to go out with somebody, and he meets this girl named Haruko who likes basketball, and she says, hey, you should join the basketball team. And he's like, oh, if I can get a chance of getting out of her, then I'll do it. But he ends up changing his like priorities and where he goes with it, and I think that's like what's really cool about Hanamichi's character and Slam Dunk in general, is that it feels very realistic in terms of, for most sports series, like there's no gimmicks. It's very direct. It's very like basketball, if that makes sense. Like there's no tricks, there's no balls going disappearing, there's no people stomping on the ground and knocking everybody over or whatever. It's just like pure unadulterated basketball, and I really enjoy it, especially because I don't really like basketball as a sport, but I think Slam Dunk is written so well. I think the art is beautiful. I mean, it really shines a light on basketball and how awesome it can be. It has like such a nice mix of character designs, and Takehiko Inoue's work shines through. It's so obvious, and honestly, it probably should be higher. However, my other three I've enjoyed a little bit more, and that's because there's kind of a bias. But yeah, Slam Dunk, number 4. Might move up someday once I finish it. So my number 3 series comes to sports manga is Whistle. Now, I am extremely biased. Soccer was my first sport and is still probably one of my favorites to play. But without the bias, regardless, Whistle is an amazing series. Honestly, the main character, Sho Kazamatsuri, is a really short, not so great at soccer, but he ends up wanting to become better. Like, he wants to play the sport. However, because his height, because of his accuracy in terms of kicking and passing, and just his overall lack of like having a sports body, really puts him behind everybody else. As you come to learn in the story, he actually was a substitute for one of the best soccer academies in the area, which is Musashi Mori, but he ends up transferring so that he has a better chance of actually being on the starting team. As he comes to learn that it's not easy being who he is in his sport, but he ends up figuring out what is his way of playing soccer, and I think that's really motivational and really interesting. And honestly, that really applies to me because I'm not the tallest, and I wasn't when I was playing soccer. I was definitely probably one of the shortest people on my team, but I did have a really strong left kick, and I was one of the only like left-footed soccer players on my team, so it gave me an opportunity. I learned to work with that, and I think I really see myself in Sho, and how he's just constantly working hard, wants to get better regardless of how much it takes. He's where I'm at in the story. He's not completely there yet, but he's definitely figuring himself out, and I think that's great. And I think that's goes for every character in the series, is that like they're all working out their demons, whether it's like issues with parents or not feeling good enough or not understanding what their priorities are. And I think that's really cool. Yeah, definitely give it a shot if you can. I know it's not the easiest series to find because it's older, but if you have the chance to read it, definitely check it out. Alright, we're coming down to the wire. Number 2 goes to Cross Game. So, this series by Mitsuru Adachi is probably one of the most emotionally charged, most compelling, or one of the most compelling series I've ever read in general. And for a sports manga, it's unbelievably great. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to unpack here. The art's great. The characters are unique. They're interesting. They have interesting morals and interesting ideas and what they want to do with their life. But let me go into it a little bit. So, main character Ko Kitamura is basically this kid who's like really into baseball, and he's like aiming to be a pitcher, but he can throw really fast, but he doesn't have a lot of control at first. So he ends up trying to get better and better, and he ends up getting better because of his friends and his close family friends, the Tsukushima family. Back in his like younger days, I want to say like in 5th grade or something, he was actually in love with one of the daughters, who is Wakaba, who unfortunately, and spoiler alert, coming up here, just as a heads up, if you haven't read Cross Game or you want to read Cross Game, this will be your time to just kind of tune it out, skip like probably the next 20-30 seconds, and then yeah, keep going. Anyways, so Ko and Wakaba, really great friends. He loves her, and she goes off to a camp and ends up drowning in the river, unfortunately. So it ends up affecting the entire family in various ways. Ends up affecting Ko and all the people who are affected by Wakaba. And I think the series tackles like sadness, depression, anxiety, and loss really well, especially for a sports manga where you're not really expecting that. I think the romance is actually really interesting later in the series. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but it's a nice mix of sports and romance and comedy. If you like baseball, you really need to check the series out. It's only 8 omnibuses in America, and wow, it's like it's hard to put into words just how great this series is. And really, you gotta check it out. You have to, just gotta. You got it? You gonna buy it? You better, please. Alright, well, if you know or have watched one of my previous videos, then you may or may not know what the number 1 answer is. And it's honestly not surprising at all if, you know, sports manga and what's been coming out recently and what just finished up recently. But my number 1 sports manga series is Haikyuu by Haruichi Furudate. What can we say about Haikyuu that hasn't already been said? Amazing art, amazing characters, amazing development of these said characters, a wonderful story, just a perfect mix of comedy, sports, action, heartbreak. It's so hard to put into words, honestly. Like I've read this series all the way through, and reading through volume 45, I really got choked up towards the end, just because like it's the end of an era, you know. I had been reading it since it first came out in America, which I don't even remember when that was. And it's one of the only series that I've read the manga and watched the anime. And I think that both are great. Like, except for maybe the newest season of Haikyuu, it's a little wishy-washy here and there. But it's one of those special series to me. Because, one, it got me to start playing volleyball, which is, like, hilarious in its own right. But it's, honestly, volleyball is really fun. It's gotten me to like characters that I never expected to like. It's gotten me to, like, memorize things about volleyball or understanding, which is, like, also mind-blowing. Because, like, I don't watch volleyball at all. But it somehow made me care enough to know these things. And it's hard not to root for all the teams. Like, all of the teams have, like, some kind of thing to them that will make you like them. My favorite team is Nakoma, because Kuro is my favorite player. But honestly, if you told me that your favorite team was, like, Karasuno or Date Tech or Aoba Josai, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, it's that good of a series that every side character, every side team, is relatable, understandable, interesting. Like, how did I don't know how Furudate did it, honestly. Like, it is such a mind-blowing series and such a mind-blowing idea that there's a manga out there where you can root for anybody and you wouldn't be in the wrong. Like, there's nobody in this series, in my opinion, that you can't root for. And I just the growth, the development of everybody, especially the main cast, and like all of the important games against like Shiratorizawa and against Aoba Josai, against Nakoma, against I'm like mad blanking. This happens sometimes. But even for the teams I didn't mention, like for the Miya Twins team or for Hoshiimi's team, like It's just so amazing to have been able to experience this series when I did, and I would really suggest if you have any semblance of enjoyment in sports manga, you have to check out Haikyuu. It's an unbelievable series. It's an experience from beginning to end. It might make you cry, it might not. I don't really care if it does. But if you have read or watched it, I would love to talk to you. Just leave it in the comments below, and I'll get right back to you, and we can talk about it. Because, golly gee, I love Haikyuu, and you should too. So, thanks for watching. Like, comment, favorite, subscribe. Remember to let me know what your top 5 sports manga are, or your top ones. If you don't have a top 5, I'd love to know, because I'm always looking for new ones. I wouldn't say I've consumed too much sports manga, but enough to feel like I could say something about it like I am now. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.